3, we need to do something about curriculum. And 4, we need to do something about enrollment, particularly in the northern part of our country. If we are able to tackle all these issues, we will begin to address the problems that we have in our education sector. You asked about foreign policy. What do I think we should do about reform in the foreign policy sector? Distinguished Senator, our foreign policy sector can be categorized into 3 broad phases. We have the early post-independence years in which our foreign policy was largely conservative and we were not really very clear what we should be doing. And then you have the post-Civil War phase of our foreign policy in which we became much more ambitious. That's when we started getting more involved in peacekeeping operations, and that's when we actually clearly defined what our foreign policy should achieve. The Adedeji panel's report in '75 did that, and it clearly talked about the decolonization agenda, and we were very active in the anti-apartheid struggle. We were also very active in the peacekeeping operations. But when you really look at that period in which we gained a lot of prominence in foreign policy and earned our kudos by becoming a frontline state in South Africa, you will notice that it was more of a Father Christmas foreign policy in which we never got much in return for what we invested in foreign policy. And that was something that the 3rd phase attempted to correct under President Obasanjo from 1999. We had a much more pragmatic foreign policy agenda, and that's when we were campaigning for debt relief, which we got, and we were tying our needs in the country to our foreign policy agenda. But that's the primary problem. Right now, our domestic agenda does not really drive our foreign policy, and we need to make sure that we get it to drive it. We also need to reform the bureaucracy in our foreign ministry and synergize it with other parts of our government, particularly trade and investment and defense and security. We also must do a lot in ensuring that our foreign policy academic institutions, NIIA, the Institute for Policy and Conflict Research, and the National Intelligence Agency are broadly aligned with the agenda of our foreign policy in the country. Finally, the current government is doing a lot positively in this direction, in recognizing that our first line of defense is our neighbors, and that we must start doing something about what is happening in our neighboring country. After that, our sub-region. After that, Africa, and then the world. And we need to also begin to move and balance our interest between the West, which we traditionally relate to, and the BRICS country, Brazil, Russia, India, China, who also have increasing engagement in our country. You asked about Burundi. We all know the reason for the current crisis in Burundi. I am not an advocate of third-termism. And if there is something that the Nigerian leadership can do, and what we've learned from peaceful transition of power in this country, we should try as much as possible to also sell that to other countries without moralizing, but ensuring that alternation of power is the best way to deepen democracy, not perpetuation of power. Thank you.
Distinguished colleagues, Dr. Kayode, I have one question for you. I observed that in the publications you made, there is a particular one that impressed me most. That is poverty eradication in Nigeria, public policy and pro-poor growth. As you rightly know, poverty is one of the most serious challenges in Nigeria. Recently, the Vice President of this country made a declaration that over 70% of Nigerians are poor. And the poor are getting poorer, the richer are getting richer every day. This hallowed chamber would like to share your thoughts on how we can minimize or eradicate poverty in Nigeria? Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator George Sekibo.
Your Excellency, I am Senator George Thompson Sekibo, CON. Mr. Former Governor, today I'm happy I'm seeing you as a very vibrant young person. I used to like reading about you. I have just two questions. The leading question, which our friend gave to you, I know is crafted to enable you come out of Ekiti State. You have come out. Now, having come out from that one, just one more question from Ekiti State. When you were governor in that state, what was the internally generated revenue value like? And when you left, how much did you drive it along? What was it when you left? Good question. Question number two. Considering the human and economic potential of this country, but with a very serious dwindling financial resources now, what advice would you give to the executive cabinet, if you were confirmed a minister, on how to improve on our revenue earning basis? What parameters, so that one day we'll also become a bill self-sufficient economically? Final question.
That's the third one.
As a former governor of a state, you have managed human problems, especially the problem of unemployment. Of course, that is a major burden on the country. What do you think we need to do as a country to provide opportunities for employment for the teeming population? Very simple questions. Thank you very much.
Senator Boniface.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Fayemi, let me congratulate you on your nomination. Now, one of the problems confronting this country is security. We have the problem of insurgency, which has caused this country billions of naira.
Ask about employment.
We also have cases of kidnapping. Recently, an elder statesman was kidnapped right in his farm. And we have a situation where there's rise in militancy from cultural organizations. With your passion for security, if you find yourself in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, what will be the security policy which you are going to promote? Thank you.
Can you answer this question, sir?
Thank you. Yes, this is one. Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Alero, I'm actually very grateful for your question on poverty. Poverty is clearly deep in our country, and the Vice President was right when he made that statement. If you look at our manifesto, we put it at a figure of about 110 million Nigerians who live below the $2 a day mark in our country. And it is a swan song every time we talk about poverty, but we do not quite fundamentally resolve all the issues associated with poverty. Poverty is not inevitable, though. We have experience of countries around the world that have lifted their people out of poverty. The good example of China and Brazil resonate very strongly with many of us. Our problem, distinguished senator, is not really just poverty. Poverty is deep, as I said. It is inequality. It is the chasm, the gap between the mindlessly rich and the hopelessly poor. You cannot have progress in any country where 1% of the population control 80% of the resources. It's a Molotov cocktail for crisis. My own idea, and it's not exhaustive, on how to deal with this problem is structural.